Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into Autonomix Medical. We're talking about one of the most speculative, highest-stakes, venture capital-style medical device plays on the public market right now.
So what is Autonomix Medical? Trading under the ticker AMIX, they're a development-stage medical device company. And I mean literally their entire reason for existing is to translate this highly ambitious neural sensing and radiofrequency ablation technology into an FDA-cleared commercial product. Now, as you probably know, that is a notoriously brutal jump to make from the lab to the clinic. I want to make something crystal clear right out of the gate here. This is a pre-revenue microcap. The investment case absolutely does not rest on current earnings. It hinges entirely, 100%, on future clinical and regulatory success.
Okay, let's dive into this core thesis. It's actually brilliantly simple in theory, even if it's incredibly complex in practice. See the nerve, target the nerve, treat the nerve, and then confirm the treatment. You see, traditional nerve ablation procedures involve a whole lot of blind uncertainty. Doctors are basically just guessing exactly where the relevant nerves are, crossing their fingers that they've deadened the pain signals without blowing up the surrounding tissue. Autonomix is trying to fix this with a catheter-based microchip platform designed to actually detect neural signals from inside the vascular system itself. If they can make neural activity detectable in real time, it takes the guesswork completely out of the operating room.
And listen, if they can pull this off, the applications are massive. Their initial target is severe pancreatic cancer-related pain, a truly devastating condition where patients desperately need better options. But the ultimate upside? That lies much further out. Theoretically, this tech could be adapted for widespread chronic pain, hypertension, renal denervation, cardiovascular applications, and a whole host of other autonomic nervous system disorders. These are absolutely massive total addressable markets. But let's be real for a second. A theoretical application is a very long way from an FDA-approved indication. We are talking about the promise here, not the current reality.
But to their credit, they are making real progress. This isn't just some pipe dream on a whiteboard anymore. Look at January 2026. A proof-of-concept study showed rapid, meaningful pain reduction across pancreatic cancer stages. Then, by June 2026, they announced preclinical evidence showing they could actually detect renal nerve activity. And then a major milestone hit in August 2026. They successfully completed a GLP preclinical study. GLP stands for Good Laboratory Practice, and it's a highly regulated standard the FDA demands before you can even think about testing in humans. So this timeline really shows how recent data is moving Autonomix from a cool science experiment toward a defined regulatory pathway.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is this remarkably tiny number, $5.1 million. That is the current market capitalization of the entire company based on recent data. To put that into perspective for you, there are luxury apartments in Manhattan that literally cost more than this entire publicly traded, clinical-stage medical device company. It's wild. This sets up some extreme financial stakes. The market is effectively telling us that while the technology might be great, the probability of actual commercialization is so uncertain that they are pricing in a massive, massive discount for risk.
And when you look at the enterprise value, it's even lower. We're talking just around $1.7 million. I know, it sounds impossibly cheap, right? But I need to warn any aggressive resale investors out there, do not, under any circumstances, mistake this for traditional value investing. There is zero commercial revenue here. You can't run standard metrics like price to earnings or price to sales because, well, there are no earnings and there are no sales. The valuation is sitting in the basement because the market is hyper-focused on the company's stark financial realities. Which brings us directly to the financial cliff. As of July 2026, Autonomix reported having roughly $5.1 million in cash on hand. But here's the kicker, their annual operating cash burn is approximately $12.3 million. You really don't need a math degree to see the massive problem here. They are just burning through cash to fund their R&D, and they are going to hit a wall very soon. This dwindling cash runway, especially when you contrast it against that huge operating burn rate, illustrates a critical, immediate need for fresh capital. The reality, they simply cannot survive without raising more money. Soon.
So how exactly do pre-revenue companies raise that money? Well, they issue more shares, and that makes relentless share dilution the absolute biggest risk here. In a little over a year, their shares outstanding spiked from 2.5 million to over 11.4 million. They actually had to pull off a recent reverse stock split just to bring the count back under a million so they could maintain their Nasdaq listing. When these pre-revenue microcaps use the capital markets like a personal ATM, relying on heavily discounted stock offerings or warrants, even if the tech ultimately wins, it almost certainly comes with brutal dilution for existing shareholders. You might own a piece of a revolutionary technology, but that piece could get microscopically small as they issue more and more shares just to keep the lights on.
All of this creates what we call an explicit binary setup. It's a classic tale of two absolute extremes. Let's look at the bull case first. You get successful clinical data, steady FDA progress, maybe a strategic partnership, and boom, it leads to a massive multi-bagger valuation. You're looking at exponential returns where that tiny market cap absolutely skyrockets. But the bear case is just as real, and honestly, it's way more common in biotech. We're talking clinical setbacks, financing nightmares, and massive share dilution that pushes the stock toward a total capital loss. So you're weighing spectacular venture capital-style upside directly against the terrifying threat of a complete wipeout.
To really quantify this, let's break down an analyst-specific probability-weighted framework from our source data. They give a 20% chance to that massive multi-bagger bull case we just talked about. But that remaining 80%? That is where the danger lives. They've mapped out a 45% base case where the tech progresses, sure, but it requires highly dilutive, repeated financing that triggers extreme stock volatility. Then there's a 35% bear case resulting in total capital loss. Combine those two, and you are staring at an 80% chance of extreme volatility or outright failure. This right here is exactly why this stock is graded at maximum risk. You've got to buckle up for a rocky ride.
And this brilliantly illustrates the complete dichotomy of Autonomix. Look at this scorecard. On one hand, technology potential and market opportunity both score a very strong 8 out of 10. The concept is genuinely fascinating, and the market potential extends way beyond their initial target. But then look at financial strength, a dismal 2 out of 10 because of those huge losses and that ticking clock on cash burn. And risk, a glaring 10 out of 10. It is an extremely speculative microcap. So those high scores in tech and market potential are entirely wiped out by terrible financials and maximum risk. It's basically a beautiful high-performance engine in a car that is completely out of gas.
So what could crash AMIX? If you're watching this stock, you have to monitor these severe warning signs like a hawk. Unexpected clinical delays, FDA regulatory setbacks, or an inability to raise capital, any of those would be devastating. And even if they do manage to raise the cash, a highly dilutive financing round could just permanently crush the stock price anyway. Then you have Nasdaq compliance problems, which are intimately tied to their tiny microcap status or the potential sudden emergence of adverse safety events in their trials. Just remember, for a company in this fragile position, financing announcements carry just as much weight as clinical data. A bad term sheet can do exactly as much damage as a bad clinical trial.
Let's move to and see how this builds, because what if things actually go right? There is a very specific sequence of catalysts needed to trigger a dramatic re-rating of this stock. Step 1 is a successful FDA submission. Step 2, securing a financing runway without completely nuking shareholder value. Step 3, getting human clinical trials initiated, proving this works safely in actual people, not just in animal models. Step 4 is delivering positive clinical data, specifically showing strong, durable, and safe pain reduction. And finally, Step 5, FDA regulatory clearance. If they can successfully march down this exact road, step by step, the underlying valuation could fundamentally transform.
Ultimately, it all comes down to this core truth, and I'll quote directly here. AMIX is not a bet on today's financials. It is a high-risk bet that its neural sensing and RF ablation platform can become an FDA-cleared, commercially valuable medical device platform. I say this with absolute conviction. What this explainer has outlined is a technology development story. It is not a proven business. You are looking at a patent portfolio, an innovative idea, and a team of scientists trying to navigate the incredibly expensive, incredibly complex world of FDA approvals. Which leaves us with the ultimate question: will Autonomix secure the crucial capital it needs to survive before the regulatory clock runs out? It's a literal race between scientific progress and the bank account. So you have to ask yourself, is the immense upside worth the terrifying binary risk? Keep a close eye on those fillings, because in a race like this, every single day matters.